Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karunya Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyanam Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravindaam Praptasya Kalyanam Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam
Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam
Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya
Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasura Sena
Romanchakam Pasru Taranga Bhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Dhirmajanado Shri Yuktasya Bhaktamsya Neyunjatapi Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Bhaktamsya Neyunjatapi Vande Guru Shri Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Swatmana Triptan Harivakta Shanga Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Swatmana Triptan Kridvaiva Tripte Vajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Shri Radhikama Davayara Para Madhura Leela Gunarupanamna Shri Radhikama Davayara Para Madhura Leela Gunarupanamna Pratikshana Sa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Pratikshana Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanaravrindam Nekunja Yuno Ratike Visiryai Jayali Vir Yuktir Apekshaneya Nekunja Yuno Tatrati daksha ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Tatrati daksha ativalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Sakshat Haritena Shamasta Shashre Ruktastatthava Vyataiva Sadave Sakshat Haritena Shamasta Shashre Kintu Pravarja Priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Priya eva tasya Vande Guru Shri Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi Yasya prasadam nagati kutapi Jayam stovam tasya yasatrin sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Jaya Subham Tasya Yasatri Sandhyam Vande Guru Shri Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Vande Guru Shri Charanarvindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Samenitina Mine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravane Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Patatare Shata Rine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunavadi Patatare Shata Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Shri Krishna Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Haraye Namah, Krishna Jadavaye Namah, Namah Krishna Jadavaye Jadavaye Madhavaya Keshavaya Namaha Jadavaye Madhavaya Gopal Govindaram Shrimadhusudan Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan Giridhari Gopinath Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghuna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raghuna Shri Jiva Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo Nitai Gaura Haribo 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 Nitai Gaura Pramanande Haribo Jai Vishnu Para Paramahansa Prabhajaka Acharya Sutta Rasa Shishya Maharaj Divine Grace Abhacharya Vina Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Pratishta Bhiviti Samstapaka Acharya Vaishnava Siromani Patit Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj Ki Jai Shri Gauriya Guru Varga Patit Udhara Ki Jai Shri Rupa Sanatana Patar Gunata Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadguru Swami Prabhu Ki Jai Namacharya Shaila Haridas Thakur Ji Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Se Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrind Ki Jai Jai Param Dayal Se Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Jai Premanam Sankirtaneka Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandan Shriman Gauranga Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mahavarana Avatar Ki Jai Golokera Pramadhana Harinam Sankirtan Jaga Ki Jai Yoga Dharma Hare Krishna Mahamantra Ki Jai Brihatnidanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopagupna Radha Kund Syamakund Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Brajabhim Vrindavan Mathura Dham Ki Jai The Lordship Shri Shri Radha Nila Madhava Ki Jai Shri Shri Maya Purnavadip Eka Chakradham Ki Jai Param Karuna Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Jai Shri Purushottama Kitra Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Shrimati Subhadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan Ki Jai Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Krishna Hare Bhagavan Ki Jai Sita Ram Lakshman Bhakta Hanuman Ji Ki Jai Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulsi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Shri Mathura Dharani Ki Jai Samaveta Bhakta Vrindi Ki Jai Nitai Gaurari Pramanande Haribo All glory to the assembled bodies, all glory to the assembled bodies, all glory to the assembled bodies, all glories, all glories, all glory to Shri Guru Shri Guru.
Hari Bol. Namaste Narasingaya Namaste Narasingaya
Namaste Narasingaya
प्रहलाद लाद दायिने
प्रहलाद लादायिने
हिरण्यकाशी पूर्वसः
हिरण्यकशिपु वक्षः
शिलटङ्कानकालये
श्रीलङ्कानकालये
इतो नरसिंहा परतो नरसिंहा
इतो नृसिंह परतो नृसिंह
यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंहा
जत जत जामि तत नृसिंह
बाहे नरसिंहा हृदय नरसिंहा
बाये नृसिंह हृदये नृसिंह
नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे
नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे
तव कर कमलवरे नखाम अद्भुत सिंहा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृङ्गा केशवधीर्ता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे
तव कर कमल भरे नाका अद्भुत सिंहा दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु
तनुभृङ्गा केशवधीर्ता नरहरिरूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव
जय नृसिंहदेव नृसिंहदेव जय नृसिंहदेव जय नृसिंहदेव
जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय भक्त प्रहलाद जय प्रहलाद महाराज
जय भक्त प्रहलाद भक्त प्रहलाद भक्त प्रहलाद जय प्रहलाद
जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 प्रभुपाद
जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय जय प्रभुपाद
जय जय गुरुदेव 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 गुरुदेव
जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय जय गुरुदेव
बोल नरसिंह भगवान की जय भक्त प्रहलाद की जय प्रभुपाद महाराज की जय
श्री वृंदायै तुलसी प्रिययै केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी सतवत्तये नमो नमः वृंदायै तुलसीदेवाय प्रियायै केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादे देवी सतवताय नमो नमः। वृंदायै तुलसीदेवाय प्रियायै केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रादे देवी सतवताय नमो नमः। श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय।
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः। नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः।
राधा कृष्णा सेवा पाबो ए अभिलाषी। राधा कृष्णा सेवा पाबो ए अभिलाषी। जितो मारा शरण लोय तारा वंच पूरन होय। कृपा कोरी करो तारे वृंदावन वासी। मोरा ये अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास। नयने हरि बो सदा जुगल रूप रासी। ए निवेदन धारो साखीर अनुगाता कोरो। सेवाधिकारा दिए कोरो निज दासी। कृष्ण दासे कोए जीना मोरा होए श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जीना भासी श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जीना भासी नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्ण प्रेयसी नमो नमः यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिण पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्महत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रणाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे जया तुलसी महारानी जया तुलसी महारानी जया तुलसी महारानी जया तुलसी महारानी जया वृंदा देवी जया वृंदा देवी जया वृंदा देवी जया वृंदा देवी नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल नित्याय गौरा हरि बोल श्री श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय।
श्री वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी। वृंदाय तुलसी देवाय प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय नमो नमः। प्रियाय केशव सत्य विष्णु भक्ति प्रदे देवी शतवताय। जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। O Tulsi, beloved Krishna, I bow before you again and again. My desire to obtain the service of Shri Radha and Krishna. May we take shelter of his wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him and make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that you also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Shri Vrindavan Dham. Thus, within my vision, I will always behold the beautiful pastimes of Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a follower of our James of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always swim in love with Shri Radha and Govinda. Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki jai. Vidyavadujevanam Anandam Buddhivadhanam Patipadam Purnamrita Sadhanam Sarvatmasnam Param Param Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Nama Karivavudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatra Pitanyamita Shmarane Nakala Idadrishi Tava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamaki Durdhaivamidrisham yajana jnanuragaha Trinadapi sunichena Tarorapi sahishnana Amanina manadena Kirtaniya sadahari Na dhanam na janam na sundarim Kavitam vajagari shakamaya Mama janmani janmanishwari Bhavata bhakti raituki tvai Ayi nandatanuja kinkaram Paditam mam visame bhavam buddha Kripaya tava pada pankajasita duli sadrisham vichintayo Nayanam galorashrudharaya Vadanam gadgadardaya gira Pulakai nichitam papukada Tavanam grahane bhavisati Juga itam nimishena Chakusha pravusaitam Shunya itam jagat sarvam Govinda virahinam Ashri Shabha Padaratam Pinashtama Adarshana Marma Hatam Karotuva Jata Tathava Vidadatu Lampato Matprana Tastu Saivanapa Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Shri Kristatam Ki Jai Namo Mahavarannaya Krishna Prema Pradayati Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gauri Krishna. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fiery condition of life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govinda. In these transcendental names you have invested your transcendental energies. There is not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once we chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself the Lord and strong as tree, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer all respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotion and service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, somewhere I am falling in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me out from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? Will my voice choke up, and will the hairs of my body stand on end at the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering a moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and it should remain so. Even if he handles me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me, he is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord unconditionally. Shri Shri Shikastakam ki jai, Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu ki jai. Namo Mahavaranaya Krishna Prema Pradati Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namine Gaura Tvishe Namah. The act and offenses in the matter of chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme with bodies, with daily life, of forgetting the holy names of the Lord. 2. To consider names of the demigods, Lord Shiva, Lord Brahma, to be equal to or independent of the name of Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities in strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activity karma kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person with the glories of holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy name and to maintain material attachments, even for understanding so many instructions on this matter. It was so unoffensively returned while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against stand offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer humble obeisance unto all the Vaishnava and devotees of the Lord. They are just like giant trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone.
And they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha, Kripasindribhyevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnava Thakur Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutali Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tanam. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Puchari Nirvi Sesa Sunyavadi Praskatirista. Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadyasya Yato Nivayad Itaratas Charte Swavigyaswarat.
Janmadyasya Yatam Vayaritaratas Chate Swavigyaswarat.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha.
Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha.
Tejo Varimidam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargomisha.
Tejo Varimidam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargomisha.
Nasrena Sadani Rasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
Dhamna Srena Sada Nirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dimahi.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality of God.
O all-pervading personality of
I
God.
offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
Offer my respectful obeisance
I
unto you.
meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute
and the
truth
primeval cause of all
and the
causes,
primeval cause of all
of the
causes.
creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested universes.
of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of the manifested
He is
universe.
directly and indirectly conscious of all
He
manifestations.
directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there's no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there's no other cause.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji,
It is the only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge into the heart of
the
Brahma,
original living
the
being.
original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are pleasant.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representations
Is going to be bewildered by the illusory
of water seen on
representations
fire or land seen on water.
of water seen to fire, land seen to water.
Only because of him do the material universes,
Only because of him do the material universe.
temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature,
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the most of nature.
appear factual although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are
I
unreal.
therefore meditate upon him, Lord Sri Krishna,
Are they for meditate upon him, Lord
who is
Shri
eternally existent in the transcendental abode,
Krishna, who is eternally existent in transcendental,
which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
which is forever free from the illusory
I
representation.
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the
Dharma
absolute
Pujita Kaitavotra
Dharma Prujita Kaito
Paramo Nimatsaranam Satam
Paramo Nirmasranam
Vedyam
Satam.
Vastavam Atra Vastu
Vedyam Vastavam Astravastu
Shivadam Tapatrayan Bulanam
Shivadam Taputra
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite
Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamani
Kimva Purer Ishvara
Kimva Parish
Sadyo Hridi Aburidite Tra
Sadyo Rudya Paridyati
Krite Behisusubistakshana, completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
completely rejecting all religious activities which are material
This
motivated.
Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth,
This Bhagavad Puran propounds a high
which is
truth,
understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure.
The
in heart.
highest truth is reality, distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth, the reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare. of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold
Such a
miseries.
truth uproots the threefold miseries.
This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity
This beautiful Bhagavatam compared with the great sage Vyasadeva is
is
maturity.
sufficient in itself for God
It's
realization.
sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other
As soon
scripture?
as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentive and submissive hears the message of
by
Bhagavatam,
this culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpataro galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataro galitam phalam.
sukamukad amrita dravya samyutam,
Sukamukharam Ritadravasam.
pibata Bhagavatam vasamalayam,
Pibata Bhagavatam Vasam.
mohor ahoraska bhuvi bhavaka.
Mura Horasika Bhuviva.
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Srimad Bhagavatam.
O expert and thoughtful man, relish Shema
The
Bhagavatam.
mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literature.
The mature fruit, the desired tree of Vedic
It
literature.
emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
It emanated from the lips of Shishukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, it emanated from the lips of Sri. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all,
Although its nectarian juice is very relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including the greatest soul.
Srimvatam Swatkata Krishna,
Shambhatam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Punya Shravana Kirtana.
Hridyantak Stohi Bhadrani,
Vidyantastu Hyabadrani.
Vidunoti Sritsatam.
Vidunoti Suritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic
or to hear from
literature,
him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from it directly through the Bhagavad
is
Gita,
itself righteous activity.
it itself is right.
And for one who hears about Krishna,
If one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna dwelling within everyone's heart,
acts as the best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing
and
friend,
purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the body constantly engaged in the hearing of
Nasta presu bhadresu,
Nasta Praisha Bhadresu.
nityam bhagavata sevaya,
Nityam Bhagavata Seva.
bhagavati uttamasloke,
Bhagavati Uttama
bhakti
Sloke.
bhavati naistaki.
Bhakti Bhagavati Nasti.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops Dharma and transcendental.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the
and from the
Bhagavad,
devotees,
and from
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in the devotional service to the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava,
Tadarajastamo Bhava.
kamalobhadayaschaye,
Amalovadeshe.
cheta etaranavidam,
Tetiranavidam.
stitvam sattve prasidati.
Dam Sarvikas.
By development of devotional service,
Devotional
one
service.
becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
One becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
And this material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso,
Evam prasannamanas.
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogataha,
Bhagavad Tattva.
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnanam,
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana.
Mukta Sangha Shijayate.
Mukta Sangha Sajayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
These impurities are wiped
the
away.
candidate remains steady in his position of pure
The
goodness,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure
becomes
goodness,
enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional
and
service,
understands the science of God perfectly.
and understands the science of God.
Vidyate Hridaya Grantis,
Hridaya Vidaya Granti,
Chidyante Sarvasamsaya,
Shidyante Sarvasamsha,
Shiyante Jashikarmani,
Shiyante
Krista
Shashakarmani,
Evat Manishware.
Justa Evadmani.
Thus, Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga serves the heart of the material faith.
and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram,
Enabling to come at once to the stage of assumption,
understanding of the Supreme Absolute Truth Personality of Godhead.
and the supreme absolute true personality of God.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, by hearing from Krishna, from his bodies and Krishna consciousness,
can one understand the science of Krishna.
to understand the science of Krishna.
Shri Shri Guru Vastika ki prayers ki jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it.
The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water before its fire to extinguish it.
So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
So the spiritual master delivers the material afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
From my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities.
Offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of species qualities.
Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments.
Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical
The
instruments.
spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan moment of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu,
Because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
because relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his
Sometimes his hair stands on end.
mind. Sometimes the hair stands on
He
end.
feels quivering in his body,
If it's quivering his
and
body,
tears flow from his eyes like waves.
and tears from so like
From my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
offer my respectful obeisance unto Lord to such a
The
spiritual master.
spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Shri Radha and Krishna.
The spiritual master usually engaged in temple worship with Shri Radha and
He
Krishna.
also engages his disciples in such worship.
He also engages his disciples in such
They
worship.
dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
They use the deities in a beautiful cloth and
clean their
ornaments,
temple,
clean their
and
temple,
perform other similar worship of the Lord.
and perform other similar worship.
My respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lord to such a
The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
spiritual master always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
Analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked.
And that's that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and
When the
sad.
spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada,
When the spiritual master sees that the body is satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad,
he is satisfied.
he is
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my respectful obeisance to the Lord to such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is very dear because he's expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tastes or arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. Huh?
We jump.
The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava and their qualities, names, and forms.
Again, chant on unlimited conjugal pastime for Radha, Victor Madhava, and their qualities, names, and forms.
The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment.
The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every
I offer
moment.
my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert at assisting the gopis who at different times make different tastes or arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana.
The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopi who at different time make different tasteful arrangement for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavan.
I offer my most I offer my most humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
Offer my most humble obeisance to the Lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord.
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servant of the Lord.
This is acknowledged by all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities.
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by the authorities.
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna.
Therefore, offer my humble obeisance unto Lord Jesus, such spiritual master, who is the bona fide representative of Sri Hari Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one received the benediction of Krishna.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make an advance.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
Therefore, I should always remember praise the spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of my spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance to Lord to my spiritual master.
Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiraj Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam.
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sakchit Ananda Vigraha Anadiradir Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam.
Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sukalpa Vriksha
Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sukalpa Vriksha
Lakshmi Sahasra Laksabrite Susurabi Rabi Palayantam
Lakshmi Susravira Vipalayantam
Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Sevyamanam
Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambrahma Sevyamanam
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Venam Kwanantam Aravinda Dalayataksham
Venum Kwanantam Aravinda Dalayataksham
Parhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam
Parambuddha Samasitam Buddha Sundaram
Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Visesa Sobham
Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Alola Chandra Kalasadmanamalya Vamsi
Alola Chanda Kalasarva Namalya Vamsi
Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam
Rannam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam
Shyamam Tribanga Lalita Niyata Prakasam
Syamam Tribhanga Lalitam Niyata Prakasham
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Arnyani Yasya Sakalendriya Rittimanti
Angani Yasya Sakalindriya Vrittimanti
Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti
Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti
Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya
Ananda Chimaya Sadipshvala Vigrahasya
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam
Aditam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupa
Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha
Adyam Purana Purusham Navajovanam Cha
Vede Sudurlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto
Vedeshu Durlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo
Pantastu Koti Satavassala Sampragami
Vayoratapi Manaso Muni Pungamanam
Vayoratapi
Supyasti
Manaso Munipungavana
Sopyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve
Sopyasya Prapadasim Chinchintya
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Ekopya Sora Chayatam Jagadanda Kotim
Ekwapya Sura Sujitum Jagadanta Kutim
Yaschakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta
Yachakti Rasti Jagananda Chayacharanta
Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam
Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarasta
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham
Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajasta Taiva
Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manujasta Taiva
Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusaha
Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusha
Sukta Yameva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti
Sute Yameva Nigama Pratistai Stuvanti
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratibhavitabis
Ananda Chinmaya Rasa Pratitavi
Tabirya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalabi
Tabirya Eva Nijarupa Taya Kalavi
Goloka Eva Nivasat Akilatma Bhuto
Goloka Eva Nivasatya Kilatma Bhuto
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena
Premanjana Churita Bhakti Virochane
Santaksadaiva Hidaye Vilokayanti Vilokayan Yam Shama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam
Yam Syama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupa
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Ramadi Murti Sukalani Amena Tishtam
Ramadi Murti Sukalani Yamena Krishna
Nana Avatara Makarod Bhuvane Sukintu
Nana Avatara Makarodi Bhuvane Sukintu
Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Yo
Krishna Swayam Sambhavat Paramam Pumanyo
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagananda Koti
Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagadanda
Koti Susesha Vasudadi Vibhuti Vinam
Sesha Vasudadi Vibhuti Vinam
Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Asesha Bhutam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Maya Hiyasya Jagananda Satani Sute
Maya Yasa Jagananda Shatani Sute
Jai Gunyatad Vishaya Veda Vitayamana
Reguna Tarvishaya Veda Vidayamana
Sattva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Sattvam
Sarva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Ananda Chinmaya Rasatmataya Manasu Ya Pranina Pratifulam Smaratam Upetya
Ya Praninam Pratipalam Smaratam Upetya
Lilayatena Bhuvanani Jaya Yajasram
Lilayitena Bhuvanani Jajajastram
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham
Golokanamni Nijadamni Talechatasya Devi Devi Mahesa Haridama Sute Sutesu
Devi Mahesha
Te Te Prabhava Nichaya Vihitascha
Te Prabhava Nichaya Vihitascha
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham
Shristi Stati Pralaya Sadhana Saktireka
Sthiti Pralaya Sadhana Shakti
Jayeva Yasya Bhavanani Vibharti Durga Ichanurupam Apiyasya Chachestatesa Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Shiram Yata Dadi Vikara Vishesha Yoga
Hiram Yata Dari Vikara Vishesha Yoga
Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasti Heto
Sanjayate Naitata
Hetoho Yasambutam Apitata Samapaiti Karyat
Yasambhutam Amitatam Samupaitikaya
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Namadi Purusham Tamaham
Departure Eva Hita Santaram Abhyupetya
Dipachi Eva Nisasanta Ramamupetya
Dipayate Vivita Hetu Samanudharma
Dipayate Vitahetu Samana Dharma
Yastadrigeva Hicha Vishnutaya Vibhati
Yastadik Eva Iva Vishnu Taya
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Yakarna Narna Vajale Vajati Sma Yoga
Yakara Narna Vajale Vajali Sma Yoga
Nidram Ananta Jagadanda Saromukupaha
Nidram Ananta Jagananda Saroma
Adhara Shaktim Avalambya Param Swamurtim Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 6, Text 12. Dharmasya mamatubhyam cha
Dharmasya Mamatubhyam Cha
kumaranam bhavasya cha
Avasya
vijnanasya cha sattvasya
Vijnanasya Cha Sattvasya
parasyatma parayanam
Parasyatma Paraya
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Also, the consciousness of that great personality is the abode of religious principles, mine, yours, and those of the four bachelors, Sanaka, Sanatana, Sanat Kumara, and Sanandana. That consciousness is also the abode of truth and transcendental knowledge. Text 13 to 16. Aham bhavam bhavaschaiva
Bhavan Bhavacheva
te ime munayo grajaha
the ime muna yogaja
surasura nara naga
Sura Sura Nara Naga
kaga mriga sarisripa
Kaga Mruga Sharis
gandharva saraso yaksha
Gandharva
saraso yaksha raksho bhuta ganoraga
Yakshubhuta Punaraga
pasava pitara siddha
Vasava Pitara
vidyadras charana druma anyecha vivida jiva jalastala naboskasa
Jalasthala Navokasha
grahaksha ketavastaras
Grahaksha Kitavastara
tadita stanayit nava
Tadita Stanayik Nava
sarvam purusha evedam
Purusha Evaidam
bhutam bhavyam bhavachayat
Bhutam Bhava
tenidam avritam vishvam vitastim aditistati. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Beginning from me, Brahma, down to you and Baba, or Shiva, all the great sages who were born before you, the demigods, the demons, the nagas, the human beings, the birds, the beasts, as well as the reptiles, etc., and all phenomenal manifestations of the universes, namely the planets, stars, asteroids, luminaries, lightning, thunder, and the inhabitants of the different planetary systems, namely the Gandharvas, Apsaras, Yakshas, Rakshas, Bhuta, Ganas, Uragas, Pasus, Pitas, Siddhas, Vidyadharas, Charanas, and all other different varieties of living entities, including the birds, beasts, trees, and everything that breathe, are all covered by the universal form of the Lord at all times, namely past, present, and future, although he is transcendental to all of them, eternally existing in a form not exceeding 9 inches. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, by his partial representation, measuring not more than 9 inches as Supersoul, expands by his potential energy in the shape of the universal form, which includes everything manifested in different varieties of organic and inorganic materials. The manifested varieties of the universe are therefore not different from the Lord, just as golden ornaments of different shapes and forms are non-different from the original stock reserve of gold. In other words, the Lord is the Supreme Person who controls everything within the creation, and still he remains the supreme separate in identity, distinct from all manifested material nature. In Bhagavad Gita 9.4-5 is therefore said to be, he is therefore said to be Yogashwara. Everything rests on the potency of Lord Shri Krishna, and still the Lord is different from and transcendental to all such identities. In the Vedic Purusha Sukta of the Rig Mantra, this is also confirmed. This phenomenal truth of simultaneous oneness and difference was propounded by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and it is known as Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva. Brahma, Narada, and all others are simultaneously one with the Lord and different from the Supreme Lord. We are all one with him, just as the gold ornaments are one in quality with the stock gold. But the individual gold ornament is never equal to the quantity with the stock gold. The stock gold is never exhausted, even if there are innumerable ornaments emanating from the stock, because the stock is Purnam, complete. Even if Purnam is deducted from the Purnam, still the supreme Purnam remains the same Purnam. This fact is inconceivable to our present imperfect senses. Lord Chaitanya therefore defined his theory of philosophy as achintya, inconceivable, and as confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita as well as in the Bhagavatam, Lord Chaitanya's theory of achintya Veda Veda Tattva is the perfect philosophy of the absolute truth. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So in the Bhagavad Gita, 9th chapter, 7th verse, 9th chapter, 4th and 5th verse, it says, Maya dakshena pakriti suyate sacharacharam hetananyena kun. I'm sorry. Maya tatam idam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina matstani sarvabhutani nachaham te suavastita. By me, in my unmanifested form, this entire universe is pervaded. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. So this is the philosophy of Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. That is, that when he's talking about his unmanifested form, he's talking about the super soul. And it can also refer to the Brahman effulgence. But unmanifested form is specifically the super soul. And it says the entire universe is pervaded by him as super soul. All beings are in me, but I am not in them. So all beings are in me means that in his Virat Rupa form, everything is contained within him. But I am not in them because he's independently engaged in transcendental pastimes in Goloka Vrindavan or in Vaikuntha as Narayana. So, therefore, he is and he isn't. He is present within everything. Everything is contained within him. And still he's independent and not affected by anything. And he's engaged in his own personal pastimes, unhindered by whatever's happening in the material world. This is called achintya, inconceivable. Inconceivable that he can expand himself as the super soul in the heart of every living entity. And how many living entities are there? Innumerable number of living entities. And how many universes are there? Innumerable universes. So this is the transcendental, let's say, nature of the Lord, and it's inconceivable to us because we cannot emulate it or come even close to it. So this is also explained in the Bhagavad Gita elsewhere. Let's see, which verse is it? 15th chapter. What verse is that? The 13th chapter, 18th verse, is it? Okay, I'll have to come back to that. Where he says he has eyes everywhere, he has legs everywhere, and he's present everywhere. So this is inconceivable. And he says, one who sees the super soul equally present everywhere in every living being does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches the transcendental destination. So in this way, the Lord is omnipresent, and yet he's independent and completely aloof from everything. So no one can claim to have such power. And that makes Krishna absolutely unique. And because of that, no one is equal to him, and no one is greater than him. And it says also in the 15th chapter, 18th verse, Yasmat Sharam Atitoham Aksharat Apichotama Atosmi Loki Vedicha Pratitai Purushottamaha. Because I am a transcendental beyond both the fallible and the infallible, and because I am the greatest, I am celebrated both in the world and in the Vedas as the supreme person. Yomam evam samodo janati purushottama sasarvavid bhajati mam sarva bhavana bharata. Whoever knows me as the supreme personality of Godhead without doubting is the knower of everything. He therefore engages himself in full devotional service to me, O son of Bharata. Iti guya tamam sat shastram idam uktam mayanaga etad budva buddhimam syat krita krityas Bharata. This is the most confidential part of the Vedic scriptures, O sinless one, and is disclosed now by me. Whoever understands this will become wise, and his endeavors will know perfection. So this is a perfect description of Krishna. And there are many, many speculators in Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy that have tried to define who God is, and they often say certain things that come a little bit close to what's said here in the last two verses that I quoted, the last three verses that I quoted. But they never really define it completely. It's always partially. And because of that, Krishna's understanding is imperfect in all the other religions, all the other philosophies. It's only in this Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam that Krishna's real nature is completely explained in full. So it takes a long time to accept this because it is achintya, it's inconceivable. And we try and measure things according to our imperfect senses. But when we submit ourselves to hearing the explanations given by Vaishnava Acharyas, then we're able to understand more clearly who is Krishna and how unique he is. And that takes time. It takes time, it takes constant hearing and repetition until it sinks into the mind that there's no one equal to or greater than Krishna, and therefore I should surrender to Krishna and completely dedicate my life to him. So this is also explained, this transcendental and immanent, at the same time immanent nature of Krishna throughout the universe is explained in the Purusha Sukta prayers of the Rig Veda, or the Rig Mantra. And that is also in the Bhagavad Gita. Let's see where it says. But the Purusha Sukta says, Sahasra Shirsa Purusha Sahasraksha Sahasrapat Sabumim Vishvato Vritva Aityantistad the Sangulam. With uncounted heads, uncounted eyes, and uncounted feet, he moves as all of creation. Verily is he uncountable beyond the grasp of the hands of men. Purusha evidam sarvam yad bhutam yatschabhavyam utam ritat vasenyashnadi yad anin atirohati. That which is that which is, was, and is to be, all of this is he alone, and the eternal beyond all end. He is the Lord alone of that. The world is food, that which hides and ventures forth. He is that too. So in other words, Krishna is everything and beyond everything. This is inconceivable. And when we talk about everything, we're not talking about one universe. We're talking about millions and millions of universes with millions and billions of living entities, and all of them are pervaded by the super soul, and all of them are contained within the universal form or Virat Rupa of the Lord. and yet the Lord is completely independent and playfully engaged in transcendental pastimes with his devotees in the spiritual world, unaffected by whatever happens in all these material universes and so forth. So this is inconceivable. We can't even come close to even imagining such a thing. No one has ever imagined anything. No science fiction book has ever come even close to imagining such things, right? And there's so many books that have been written of science fiction and so forth, and fantasy, but it doesn't even come close to this. So, therefore, we have to submissively hear this and chant Hare Krishna and purify ourselves so that we can understand it. Why do we have to become purified? Because the false ego is the stumbling block. It refuses to accept there's someone greater than ourselves. So the whole purpose of the Bhagavad Gita is to convince us that there are many people greater than we are, but there's one person who's greater than all, and that's Krishna. And therefore, we should surrender to the greatest person. Now, this philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva has a name also in Western philosophy. It's not pantheism, but panentheism. So let's see what that is all about. 1 second. Go back to that. Panentheism. This is again a Greek word, and it means all in God. And it says, is the belief that the divine intersects every part of the universe and also extends beyond space and time. The term was coined by the German philosopher Karl Kraus in 1828 to distinguish the ideas of George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel and Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph Schelling about the relation of God and the universe from the supposed pantheism of Baruch Spinoza. Like pantheism, which holds that the divine and the universe are identical, panentheism maintains an ontological distinction between the divine and the non-divine and the significance of both. In panentheism, the universal spirit is present everywhere, which at the same time transcends all things created. While pantheism asserts that all is God, panentheism claims that God is greater than the universe. Some versions of panentheism suggest that the universe is nothing more than the manifestation of God. Anyway, it's starting to go away from the actual meaning. So this panentheism is actually Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva, or it's coming close to it. Let's put it like that. There are hints of this in other religious traditions, in the Bible, in the Quran, and in Buddhist writings, and in Sikhism, but they're not completely clear. Here in Bhagavad Gita, it's absolutely completely clear that Krishna is simultaneously one and inconceivably different at all times. And once we begin to, let's say, absorb this or digest this type of understanding, then we see that it's present everywhere. Everywhere, things are one and different at the same time. Like, for example, the gold in the gold mine and the gold in the gold jewelry are one and the same. Same gold. But at the same time, they're different because the quantity of gold in the gold mine far exceeds the gold in the gold jewels and whatever, or different utensils made of gold and so forth. So they are one and different simultaneously. One in quality, different in quantity. This is called Achintya Bheda Abheda Tattva. And this is further explained. Let's hear what Prabhupada says. He says, purport to 9.4, and then we'll read the purport to 9.5, where this Achintya Beta Beta Tattva is completely explained in Bhagavad Gita. It says, the Supreme Personality of God is not perceivable through the gross material senses. It says, Atakshi Krishna Nama Dinava Vedayam Indriyai Sevan Mukehi Jiva Do Swayam Eva Spurat Yata. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.234. Lord Sri Krishna's name, fame, pastimes, etc. cannot be understood by material senses. Only to one who is engaged in pure devotional service under the proper guidance is he or Krishna revealed. In the Brahma Samhita 538 it says, Premanjana Chudita Bhakti Vilochanena Santak Sadeva Hridaya Suvilokayanti. One can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, always within himself and outside himself, if one has developed a transcendental loving attitude towards him. Thus, for people in general, he is not visible. Here it is said that although he is all-pervading, everywhere present, he is not conceivable by the material senses. This is indicated here by the word avyaktamurtina. Avyaktamurtina basically means the unseen murti, or the unseen deity. Because we don't see the supersoul in the heart. But we can understand the presence of the supersoul in the heart of every living entity, including our own, by hearing this from the Bhagavatam, and while we're purifying ourselves through chanting Hare Krishna and following the regulative principles of Krishna consciousness. He is not conceivable by the material senses. This is indicated here by the words avyaktamurtina. But actually, although we cannot see him, everything is resting in him, as we have discussed in the 7th chapter. The entire material cosmic manifestation is only a combination of his two different energies, superior spiritual energy and inferior material energy. Just as the sunshine is spread all over the universe, the energy of the Lord is spread all over the creation, and everything is resting in that energy. Yet one should not conclude that because he is spread all over, he has lost his personal existence. To refute such an argument, the Lord says, I am everywhere and everything is me, but I am aloof. For example, a king heads a government which is but the manifestation of the king's energy. Therefore, governmental departments are nothing but the energies of the king, and each department is resting on the king's power. But still, one cannot expect the king to be present in every department personally. That is a crude example. Similarly, all the manifestations that we see and everything that exists both in the material world and in the spiritual world are resting on the energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The creation takes place by the diffusion of his different energies, and as stated in Bhagavad Gita, Vistabhyaham idam Krishnam, he is everywhere present by his personal representation, the diffusion of his different energies. So, he's personally present and he's impersonally present by the diffusion of his energies, including Brahma Jyoti, which is the basis or the platform on which the whole universe exists. Material universes exist, and also the spiritual universe. And then it says, Nachamat stani bhutani pasyame yogam aiswaram. Bhuta brin nacha bhuta krit. Bhuta brin nacha bhuta sto bhuta mamatma bhuta bhavana. And yet everything is created, everything that is created does not rest in me. Behold my mystic opulence. Although I am the maintainer of all living entities, and although I am everywhere, I am not a part of this cosmic manifestation, for myself is the very source of creation. So this is confusing for materialistic people. They say, wait a minute, this is like double talk. I don't understand what he's talking about. Well, because they haven't heard Vedic philosophy. They don't understand that Krishna is Vadanti Tattvavidas Tattvam Yajnanamadvayam Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Sabhyate. It is understood in 3 steps: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. They haven't heard that. They don't understand what those words mean. They don't understand how one person can be everything and still maintain his individuality. So this is also explained in the Ishopanishad, in the mantra, not mantra, but the invocation, which says, Om Purnam Ada Purnam Idam Purnat Purnam Adashyate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. The personality of God is perfect and complete. And because he is completely perfect, all emanations from him, such as this phenomenal world, are perfectly equipped in complete whole, as complete wholes. Whatever is produced of the complete whole is also complete in itself. Because he is the complete whole, even though so many complete units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. So that means in the spiritual world, 1 plus 1 equals 1, and 1 minus 1 equals 1. In other words, Krishna is never depleted, although he's expanding innumerable universes and the whole spiritual world, and then innumerable universes in the material world, and he's also from him are emanating all the different incarnations and expansions of Godhead. At the same time, all the jivas are expansion of his energies. There's 3 major categories of energy: internal, external, and marginal. And at the same time, he's expanded into the material nature everywhere as Paramatma, and in the heart of every living entity. He's also, everything is included in him as the Virat Rupa, but yet he's beyond it and transcendental, and not in any way limited or inhibited in any way by all this expansion of his energies. Therefore, he has unlimited energies. This alone is incomprehensible. Someone can, one individual can have unlimited energies and unlimited expansions. You see. So, Prabhupada explains in the purport to this introductory mantra of the Ishopanishad, he says, because we do not know that there is a complete arrangement in nature for our maintenance, we make efforts to utilize the resources of nature to create a so-called complete life of sense enjoyment. Because a living entity cannot enjoy the life of the senses without being dovetailed with the complete whole, the misleading life of sense enjoyment is illusion. The hand of a body is a complete unit only as long as it is attached to the complete body. When the hand is severed from the body, it may appear like a hand, but it actually has none of the potencies of a hand. Similarly, living beings are part and parcel of the complete whole, and if they are severed from the complete whole, the illusory representation of completeness cannot fully satisfy them. The completeness of human life can be realized only when one engages in the service of the complete whole, or Krishna. All services in this world, whether social, political, communal, international, or even interplanetary, will remain incomplete until they are dovetailed with the complete whole. When everything is dovetailed with the complete whole, the attached parts and parcels also become complete in themselves. Well, we can see that even the richest man is never satisfied. Even the person who has so many properties is never satisfied, or a person who has so many wives is never satisfied, or someone who has so many cars is never satisfied. They keep buying more and more cars if they have the money, and they keep them in some kind of a showroom, and they drive one or another, maybe once a year or twice a year. But they just keep increasing the cars if they have the life and the money to do it. So they're never completely satisfied. No matter how many wives they have or how many husbands or what a woman has, they're never satisfied, right? Because it's incomplete. It's not, there's no understanding of who Krishna is, and therefore they engage in sense gratification, but the sense gratification is never completely satisfied. Nothing can be complete unless it's in relation to Krishna. So when people cut off their relation to Krishna, they never can be satisfied. Okay. But when once this develops a relationship with Krishna, they become completely satisfied with a lot fewer things or hardly anything, and they completely feel satisfied just by the service and the contemplation of Krishna. So this is incomprehensible for most people. How can they be satisfied with less when they're never satisfied with more? Well, if you have Krishna, you'll be satisfied. Because Krishna encompasses everything. But that's a difficult concept for people to absorb. And the main stumbling block is the false ego. Okay, so then in the purport to 9.5 in Bhagavad Gita, it says, the Lord says that everything is resting on Him. Matstani sarvabhutani. And this should not be misunderstood. The Lord is not directly concerned with the maintenance and sustenance of this material manifestation. Sometimes we see a picture of Atlas holding the globe on his shoulders. He seems to be very tired, holding this great earthly planet. Such an image should not be entertained in connection with Krishna's upholding the created universe. He says that although everything is resting on him, he is aloof. The planetary systems are floating in space, and this space is the energy of the Supreme Lord. But he is different from space. He is differently situated. Therefore the Lord says, although they are situated on my inconceivable energy as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I am aloof from them. This is the inconceivable opulence of the Lord. In the Nirukti Vedic dictionary is said, Yujyate nena durgatesu karyesu. The Supreme Lord is performing inconceivably wonderful pastimes, displaying his energy. His person is full of different potent energies, and his determination is itself actual fact. In this way, the personality of Godhead is to be understood. We may think of doing something, but there are so many impediments, and sometimes it is not possible to do as we like. But when Krishna wants to do something, simply by his willing, everything is performed so perfectly that one cannot imagine how it is being done. The Lord explains this fact, although he is the maintainer and sustainer of the entire material manifestation, he does not touch this material manifestation. Simply by his supreme will, everything is created, everything is sustained, and everything is maintained, and everything is annihilated. There's no difference between his mind and himself, as there is a difference between ourselves and our present material mind. Because he is absolute spirit, simultaneously the Lord is present in everything, yet the common man cannot understand how he is also present personally. He is different from this material manifestation, yet everything is resting on him. This is explained here as Yogam Aishwaram, the mystic power of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, it's not easy to write a purport to a verse like this, or the previous two verses that we read. You have to have a genuine understanding of who God is to be able to write the purport. Otherwise, like for example, I'll give you an example now of a Buddhist who's trying to explain panentheism, right? One second. Buddhism, okay. The Reverend Zen Master Soyen Saku was the first Zen Buddhist abbot to tour the United States in 1905 and 6. He wrote a series of essays collected into the book Zen for Americans. In the essay titled The God Conception of Buddhism, he attempts to explain how a Buddhist looks at the ultimate without an anthropomorphic God figure while still being able to relate to the term God in a Buddhist sense. So anthropomorphic means like a human being. So he's going to try and explain how a Buddhist looks at the ultimate, meaning ultimate truth, without a personal form. Or a personal form of God, of a God figure, while still being able to relate to the term God in a Buddhist sense. This is all gobbledygook nonsense, right? So now this Zen master, Soyen Saku, he writes, at the outset, let me state that Buddhism is not atheistic, as the term is ordinarily understood. Now that's a false statement right there. But anyway, let's hear what he says. It has certainly a God, the highest reality and truth, through which and in which this universe exists. However, the followers of Buddhism usually avoid the term God, for it savors so much of Christianity. In other words, smells like Christianity is saying. So they avoid the word God, whose spirit is not always exactly in accord with the Buddhist interpretation of religious experience. Again, Buddhism is not pantheistic. In other words, it doesn't believe that the whole universe is God, he's saying, in the sense that it identifies the universe with God. On the other hand, the Buddhist God is absolute and transcendent. This world, being merely its manifestation, is necessarily fragmental and imperfect. To define more exactly the Buddhist notion of the highest being, it may be convenient to borrow the term very happily coined by the modern German scholar panentheism, according to which God is all and one, and more than the totality of existence. Well, he rejects any idea of a form of God, right? But yet, here he's talking about the Buddhist concept of God that is not a person. So you see, this is double talk. This is nonsense what he's saying. He has imperfect knowledge, but he's trying to use all these transcendent terms. So panentheism means God is immanent or present in everything, and he's also aloof from everything and transcendental. So he's trying to, paste a square piece of wood into a round hole. You understand? It's not going in properly. How can it go in? Where he's denying the individuality of Krishna, but saying that still their concept of God is not a person, but you can use the word God if you want to, which would refer to a person. Right? So it's a bunch of nonsense. But people believe this. And then it says, the essay then goes on to explain, first utilizing the term God for the American audience to get an initial understanding of what he means by panentheism, and then discusses the terms that Buddhism uses in the place of God, such as Dharmakaya, Buddha or Adi Buddha, and Tathagata, blah, 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 blah. So all a bunch of words, but when he's trying to explain exactly what I mean by God, he's denying the individuality of Krishna. So it's a bunch of nonsense. But it sounds good for people who don't know nothing. It doesn't sound good for people who have a understanding of Krishna's transcendental nature, which is personal. So they deny this whole personality of God. It's like I said, it's a cancel culture. They're canceling God's individuality, but yet they say he's transcendental, and they use the word God, or he also, a pronoun. But yet, when it comes down to the fact, they're rejecting God as a person. Okay, so all in this article that I'm reading from, it analyzes all the major religions of the world and shows how they come close sometimes and then they go far away again from the actual truth about who God is. Okay. So therefore, we have a real interest in hearing about Krishna from Bhagavad Gita, or Krishna himself, and from our acharyas. Otherwise, you read all this other gobbledygook, you'll get confused, and you won't really be understanding anything. Right? Okay, so we'll stop right there. So here it says that the Lord is everywhere present by the diffusion of his different energies, and that means as the Paramatma, as Brahma Jyoti, and as the Jivas also, right? So that he can say that I have millions of arms and millions of legs and millions of heads. So, because he's present in the heart of every Jiva. Okay, so this very subtle philosophy of Lord Chaitanya, Achintya Beda Abeda Tattva, is present everywhere in the universe. And when we begin to understand that, we can see how sublime this philosophy of Lord Chaitanya is, and how is the correct understanding of Krishna and the universe and the purpose of life. Okay, we'll stop right there. Are there any questions? Well, it signifies something that you're not seeing now, but later on you'll be able to see as we become purified. Yeah, that means that the Lord is present in the heart, right? But in this, as super soul, you can feel the result of the presence of the super soul, because he's the source of knowledge, and he's directing the wanderings of living entities in this material world, all of us. But you're not seeing the super soul, but you can understand his presence by the result of his presence. In other words, you have intuition. Sometimes you feel something in your heart, and you're pretty sure of it, but no one had told you anything, right? So that is a sign of the presence of the super soul. And then also, you're able to remember things. So that ability to remember things is coming from the super soul. And you have attractions to things, and what you're attracted to is actually the super soul, or Krishna. Like, for example, you see a very beautiful person, so that beauty that you're seeing is coming from Krishna. You're attracted to a person who's a very eloquent speaker. That eloquence is coming from Krishna. So all these things, based on consciousness and knowledge and ability, all these things are coming from the fact that the super soul is in the heart. It's not simply the individual soul. Behind the individual soul is the super soul, who's the source of all knowledge and consciousness. So that was the verse today, actually, as it says, that beginning from me, meaning Brahma, down to you and Baba, Shiva, all the great sages who were born before you, the demigods, the demons, the nagas, the human beings, the birds, the beasts, as well as the reptiles, etc., and all phenomenal manifestations of universes namely the planets, stars, asteroids, luminaries, lightning, thunder, and the inhabitants of the different planetary systems, namely the Gandharvas, the Apsaras, the Yakshas, Rakshas, Bhutaganas, Uragas, Pasus, Pitas, Siddhas, Vidyadharas, Charanas, and all other different varieties of living entities, including the birds, beasts, trees, and everything that be, are all covered by the universal form of the Lord at all times, namely past, present, and future, although he is transcendental to all of them, eternally existing in a form not exceeding 9 inches. So, this is Achintya Veda Veda Tattva. He's simultaneously one and different, and he's transcendental, although he's immanent, he's present everywhere. Okay? So, now, if it says 9 inches, that means it's 9 inches, but even though you can't see it, right? Even though you can't see the super soul, but one day you will be able to see the super soul. And it's just like I heard a lot of things about India, but I had never gone to India. And then I heard more things about India when I read Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, and then listening to Prabhupada speak, but I still had not gone to India. But finally I did go to India, and one thing that I saw that really amazed me was that the way Prabhupada taught us about Krishna consciousness in America, when I went to India, I saw that everything he said was true. Especially when I went to Vrindavan, I saw people walking around with their bead bags, chanting Hare Krishna. I saw deities of Krishna. There was so many temples there, and everyone was, always talking about Krishna. And then what convinced me was one day I was walking down the street in Delhi, and somebody stopped me, and he said, "You're Hare Krishna." I said, "Yes." He said, "Okay, I want you to come to my house." I said, I don't even know who you are. You don't know who I am. He said, "No, you're Hare Krishna, right? You're Prabhupada, ISKCON?" I said, "Yes." "Okay, I want you to come to my house." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes. I want to come to my house, and I'm going to bathe, take a shower, then I'm going to cook prasadam. I'm going to offer it to my deity. I want you to chant Hare Krishna, and then I want you to do pravachan." So that's where I realized everything Prabhupada had taught us was correct. Here was a devotee of Radha Raman, Krishna's manifest form as the Shalagram Shila, and he knew exactly who I was, and he knew that I would understand everything he said. And about, I'm going to cook prasadam, I'm going to make the offering to my deity, and I want you to give pravachan from Bhagavad Gita, right? So he knew who I was, and I recognized what he was saying, because we had been trained correctly by Prabhupada. So now I had heard things about India. I had learned a lot of things about, Krishna consciousness. But when I actually went to India, I realized that everything Prabhupada told us was actually a fact. So it's the difference between hearing about something and actually experiencing it. Because everything Prabhupada said was correct, when I experienced it actually, I saw that, yes, everything he told was exactly the original culture of India. So we can hear about the super soul, and we're hearing so many things about the super soul, but it's hard to believe that he's 9 inches and present in our heart, right? That doesn't mean it's not true. It just means that we haven't realized it yet by experience. We've theoretically heard it. Just like I theoretically heard so much about India, right? But I wasn't sure about any of that. But when I went there, I saw that everything Prabhupada said about India was true, and about Krishna consciousness was true. It was not something manufactured by him. Right? He came and gave the. Yeah. And Krishna is smaller than that also. But he's also has a form of 9 inches, and that and says in this verse today that that 9 inches expands into the whole universe. Right? It says. It says all these living entities, from Brahma down to Brahma and Shiva, down to every individual, including all the great sages and so forth, and all the different varieties of human beings in this universe, and all other living entities, the birds, the beasts, everyone, are covered by the universal form of the Lord at all times, namely past, present, and future. Although he's transcendental to all of them, eternally existing in a form not exceeding 9 inches. If someone reads that doesn't know anything about Krishna consciousness, this is nonsense. It's all contradictory. But see, that's the whole point about Krishna. He can have mutually contradictory qualities. Nobody else can do that. Mutually contradictory. He can be far away and very near. He can be bigger than everything and smaller than the smallest. Unless we assimilate all these knowledge about Krishna, we remain an atheist. We say, no, that's not possible. That means we're an atheist. We reject the incredible powers of the Lord. Therefore, we remain an atheist. Yeah.
It could be circular. Let's say if we can say 9 inches, but our senses we are thinking our heart is small. How come in 9 inches? But if you think about it, we are thinking that it is just a straight line 9 inches, so it can expand beyond 9 inches more than our chest.
No, it can expand to the whole universe.
Yeah.
The Virat Rupa.
But if we think like, if it is like, if a spiral thing, like even if 9 inches spiral thing, it can fit into your heart. It's 9 inches. So we need to think out of the box. When we come to the first 10 we read this sentence, we think, oh, 9 inches it cannot fit into, because we have an image of 9 inches is like a straight line of 9 inches. But if it is circular, then even if like 100 inches it could fit into the sun. So if you have to think out of the box, probably we will get answer.
Well, you don't want to speculate like that.
No, I'm thinking.
You don't want to speculate. Some say that's why it says achintya, inconceivable. Don't try and fit it into something that you can measure. Right? Yeah, go ahead. Well, how about the ant? He's in the heart of the ant also. It can be less or it can be more also. He can expand and retract as he wants. Right. Right. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Satma Bando Mui Sahavadana Mate Janara Prasade Bhai E Bhavatoriya Jai. Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Kya Guru Mukha Padma Vakya Chitete Koriya Kya Arana Koriya Mane Asa Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttamagati E Prasade Pure Sarva Asa Chakshudan Dilaje Janme Janme Prabhu se Divya Yani De Prakasito Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasa Jate Vede Gaye Janara Charito Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu Lokanath Lokera Jivana Lokanath Lokera Jivana Ha ha Prabhu Kora Doya Deha More Padachaya Ah Prabhu Kora Doya Deha More Padachaya Ebeyas Kusukti Bhuvana Ebeyas Kusukti Bhuvana Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo, Nitai Gora. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pararaja Pachaskutara Satarshi Shishimad. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Ki Jai. Ramacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Jai Shri Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Nilmadava Ki Jai. Gaurnitai Ki Jai. Bhagavan Jagannath Subhadra Baladevi Ji Ki Shri Shri Radha Nilmadava Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. All glories assembled Lord. All glories assembled Lord. All glories assembled Lord. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Patita Pavan Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vishnu. Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swami. Namaste Saraswati. Say Swami. Paskati Desata. The lotus feet of our spiritual master, the only way by which we contain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great honor and reverence. By his grace, not the course, and this shall suffer and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My wish